Hello everyone, welcome back to Making It. In this episode, we are once again taking a look at 3 channels that we have unearthed from the depths of YouTube that are doing something a bit different, something that's a bit interesting and something that we hope that you can learn from. So this week, Gwilym, why don't you kick us off with the channel that you have been looking at?
Yeah, this is not from the depths of YouTube. This is quite a big channel, 2.9 million subscribers currently. However, the striking thing about it is that it's grown really fast over the last 1 year. So 2 million subscribers added. It's called Renaissance Periodization. However, it's run by the other Dr. Mike. So not Dr. Mike, but rather like Dr.
Like there's 3 Brian Johnsons, there's 2 Dr. Mike.
Yeah, this one is Dr. Mike Israetel. If you've seen his stuff, you probably know him best from him critiquing celebrities' workout routines. So like typical title is Exercise Scientist Critiques Hugh Jackman's Celebrity Workout or something like this. And usually he's reacting. So it's always Dr. Mike, who's a big guy, he's a bodybuilder, sat behind a desk watching someone's workout routine and saying, what the is this? Or like, this is questionable. His videos are usually maybe about 20, 30 minutes long, I think. Let me check.
They're about that long.
Yeah, about that long. And he'll basically give a kind of scientific roasting, and we'll stop and say, oh, this is the science behind why this is a terrible idea. This is what you should do instead. And the rest of the time he does topics like, does sauna actually boost muscle growth and recovery? Or this is how you should train for your back, etc. And he's been his output is insane. So not only lots of views, but listen to this. Last month, he published 22 videos. The month before that, 24 videos. The month before that, 22. Month before that, 22. These are all long form videos. He's also doing extremely well on short form. So that's basically a video for every working day of the week. And he has a second channel called Mike Israetel, where he publishes roughly 4 times a month. So he's doing his 5 videos, and then on the weekend he's like, why don't I just do another one? And they're on totally different topics. They're things about how to get promoted at work, why young people should be optimistic about the future, how to deal with getting bullied, etc. I basically, and he recently put out a long video saying why he's quitting his career his part-time career as a professional bodybuilder to focus on the channel and the business behind it, because it's been doing so well. So I basically wanted to break down why is this channel doing so well, and are there lessons we can learn, if any, other than just be Mike Israetel and have a crazy work ethic?
Can I just ask, is this the reason that because I know you brought this guy up on the podcast in the past, is it the kind of the meta of, oh, this guy is growing really fast and that's interesting, that makes you like think about him loads? Or like, what is it that keeps drawing you back to him?
What keeps me thinking about Mike Israetel is one, I'm really fascinated by how he builds a community of people who I feel, because I'm adjacent to that community, just whenever they see a video by him, they just like click Mike Israetel, love that stuff. I'm interested in how he can make so many videos so quickly.
Do you think that the reason people click because they instantly see him, a large part of that is because it's daily or almost daily? It's like a ritual.
It is like a ritual. It's also this is getting into why I'm interested in him. Are all these factors? He has a very funny personality, and so when you're kind of edgy, dark humor, doesn't take himself too seriously. Maybe if you watched like a Will Tennyson videos, also exercise, there's a lot of kind of like edgy jokes about, I don't know, erectile dysfunction and like so I think the humor keeps people coming back, but also the feeling like they're learning something. So if you think about, say, the Human Lab podcast, it's very scientific and dense. Mike Israetel is kind of getting towards also long form scientific education, but it's very fun to watch and listen. If you watch him, you never know what's going to happen next. Sometimes there's banter with the camera guy. Sometimes Mike starts talking about something that happened in his past. He's often, it feels like, even though he's on a YouTube video, it feels like he's breaking the fourth wall sometimes. Sometimes he like talks to you. He's like, guys, this is what I actually think about this. This is kind of crazy or whatever. And it just feels like you're talking to a friend who happens to do YouTube videos, who doesn't take it very seriously, and sometimes pauses his filming to talk to you. So I think that's a huge factor.
Yeah, it seems like I've always sort of struggled to watch Huberman videos because they're like 3-4 hours long. And like I said, they're very dense. It's kind of him just talking at you. And I feel like with Mike, it's way easier to watch because it's like 10 to 30 minutes. I think one of the things I really like about his style is the editing, you know, in that to the left of him, he usually has just this little rectangle, and whatever he's talking about, there are these very simple, usually actionable bullet points, and it's just very condensed. And I really appreciate that. And I think for the most people who want to get in shape, who are looking to someone like Mike to disprove a lot of the things that are taken as gospel and to break apart these myths, a 20-minute video that does that and gives you these really actionable bullet points, I feel like is way easier to get to the answers than for Huberman, where it's like, it's 3 hours of, talking about some specific muscle or a particular vitamin stack or something like that. Like, to me, that's, I think, for the people who are really engrossed in the health topic. And I think most people don't care to that level. I think most like gym bros, air quotes, would probably like someone more like Mike to get them in the door, and they'll probably graduate to Huberman level of depth of information eventually.
The interesting thing is that I don't feel like they would even need to graduate to Huberman level of depth, because actually what you see with Huberman's channel just recently is he has noticed this as well. His team have noticed this. And they're now putting out 30-minute episodes that are just like, these are the takeaways. For good sleep, you should do blah, 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 blah.
Which is what I want.
Yes.
That's why I love Brian Johnson's videos, is because they are these short, snappy videos explaining exactly what to do. Huberman, it feels like it's the Bible of health. And if you really want to go in depth, that's where you go. So it's kind of nice to hear that he's going for these 30-minute videos that will be a little bit easier for people to watch.
I suppose it's just about matching the format of the video to the intention of the viewer. So like maybe this is something even to think about with your own videos, is like, so Huberman's thing is primarily a podcast. And so I'd listen to that as I'm like going places and I've got time and I'm happy to like go more in depth and learn about stuff that I'm not really going to implement, but that's just interesting to me and that I might bring up in conversation. But then with something like YouTube, like you say, for the intention of the viewer, the outcome they want is that they just want to learn the thing quickly and they're going to sit and they're going to watch. Versus, Huberman's thing where it's like you're happy to kind of relax and be doing something else while you're listening to him go in depth.
Yeah. So if someone was listening and they're like, okay, Mike Israetel is doing really well, how do you, can it be replicated? I would say, I don't know. But I would say these are the necessary ingredients. 1, do you have a large stockpile of knowledge about a topic that a lot of people might be interested in? So Mike has been a professor of exercise scientist and a professional bodybuilder for many years. So he's got a lot of his videos are kind of like funny little lectures. He's even got the slides, right? And I've seen him, videos of him lecturing. That's kind of what he does when he lectures as well. He puts in all those jokes. So have you got all that in the bank? Secondly, are you an engaging speaker? Do you have a quirky sense of humor? Mike's been doing this type of video in one shape or form for about 5 years. So his older videos, he's less polished, but now, particularly with the volume that he puts out, he's done more in a year than most YouTubers do in maybe 5 years, because he just publishes so often.
Yeah, I never knew he'd been publishing for 5 years. I thought he only started this year and he just blew up. Wow, that's something to point out there, right? With the consistency.
Exactly. Thirdly, so have you got expertise? Have you got like the gift of the gab, I guess we'd say in the UK? Thirdly, can you get a reproducible format? With Mike, I assume he's batch filming these. He's just sat at his desk. He's reacting to something. And obviously this is a big part of the success is, can you react to something that people are already interested in? Or can you talk about something and kind of trend jack? So if Hugh Jackman is in a new movie that's coming out soon, react to his routine. Something that lets you move really fast. For example, like Brian Johnson's channel put out a video looking at Dana White's workout routine, and then maybe like, which had been online for ages, and then maybe like 5 days later, Mike also put out a video on that, which just shows how quickly he can see something, be like, okay, I'm going to do that. And then finally, have you got an insane work ethic? Because clearly, I feel like Mike puts the same energy into filming as he does into working out. It's just like, I'm going to turn up and grind out the reps.
I'm curious to whether you have any thoughts on how he actually creates these. So we're talking about this speed that he's able to produce this fast. I know most people won't be trying to make videos that frequently. But in terms of, like you said before, he'll as if he's kind of stopping filming for a bit and just talking directly to the viewer. To what level of kind of pre-preparation, or just preparation as it's often known, do you think he is going to with these videos? Like, do you think this is something that's fully scripted and he will break away? Or is it like bullet points and he's just got such inherent knowledge that he can just riff it? Like, what are you thinking?
Honestly, I don't know. I would guess that it's bullet points that he's looked over beforehand and thought about quite deeply, and maybe he does more prep for some things than others. But then again, I was surprised with the latest John Ushai interview with Casey Neistat, where he was like, Casey, how do you talk off the top of your head so eloquently? And Casey was like, yeah, man, it takes me days to think through and process, and I like talk about it in my head for hours, and I get it all clear, and then I sit down and I usually do it in one take. And I was like, wow. People get suckered into thinking that what you see is exactly how it was made, but it takes ages to talk off the top of your head. So Mike may well be doing a lot of prep that we're not aware of, or he may just have it all in his head. The final interesting thing before I stop gushing about Mike Israetel's channel is how it's monetized is very interesting. So he's got an app called Renaissance Hypertrophy app. No, sorry. It's got the longest full name of anything you've ever heard. The Renaissance Periodization Hypertrophy app, RP Strength app. Anyway. So he doesn't do sponsorships that I've seen. Instead, at certain points in the video, they will cut very suddenly in a jokey segue way to a little bit about, and that is why you should use the Renaissance Hypertrophy app. So all of his videos are directing people towards this thing, which is, I assume, the main moneymaker of the business. People don't feel like he's got something to sell that is like AG1 or whatever, because he's just talking about his own product. He doesn't have to negotiate with sponsors and figure out how he's going to do the creative. The editor just slaps this thing in at whatever time they think works best. And yeah, everything, it's a really good funnel. So that's the last component.
That's really cool.
Nice.
Love it.
All right, George, what is your channel?
So this week I wanted to talk about it started with a thumbnail that I saw, and this was one of those things that I added to my like inspiration list immediately. It's a video by a channel called ManMade. And the thumbnail is of just a guy in a kind of really quirky looking office that he's built under his stairs. The video is called Building a Tiny Office Pod Under My Stairs. So I added that immediately and was like, okay, I'm going to come back to that later. And then had a bit of a deep dive into this guy, and basically he's come from another channel which he ran for I think 7 or 8 years, which is called Team Edge. I'd never heard of this channel before, but that was kind of like it was a Mr. Beast-esque, kind of like a wholesome Mr. Beast style channel. Let's say like maybe like more in line with traditional TV game shows that you'd see, but with that kind of Mr. Beast competitive edge. Like there's there's one video where there's a bunch of them that have to try and just climb a really slippery set of stairs, and there's like a pool of gunge at the bottom if they fail. So it's this real mixture of different things. But what I found out was that in the time he'd been running, or one of the two guys running this channel, I think he was probably quite involved with a lot of the building of the sets that they would use for this channel. And so they parted ways about a year ago in terms of working together. And he's basically now gone all in on this kind of, this DIY style of thing. And currently he's only got 4 videos. They've all got over 1 million views, but this tiny office one has nearly 10 million views at time of recording. And he's basically taking the skills that he had and he's turning them to these relatively mundane tasks throughout his house. So, and obviously the Office Pod one looks very cool, but is ultimately just building a home office. Another video he has is where he makes a dining table with a waterfall on it. So like completely pointless, but a thing that he can do with an everyday household object. And then he made another one, and I've got some stuff to say about the way his less popular videos are packaged. But the other one is that I liked was creating the most satisfying desk, which is basically where he makes a desk, but it has this kind of like, it has a tree that's planted in it and a load of sand with a little rake that he can use to rake the sand. And the rake fits perfectly in this little hole that he's cut in the desk. It's so extra and so mundane, but just really interesting. And so like off the bat, like the reason I like this guy so much is actually last week we were recording another Q&A episode, and I talked about my kind of dream of if I were to run my dream YouTube channel, it would be doing something like going to the woods and just chopping wood and doing something mundane. And so that's why this guy's channel really captured my attention.
Do you think he pivoted into this? Do you think there was something about the last YouTube channel that he'd been running for so long that informed the type of content he was doing this time around?
I wonder, because like that stuff was all very kind of over the top. It was very much like, this week we've got 3 competitors and they're going to try not to fall off of this ledge. And whereas this is a much more stripped back thing. And we can get into this maybe, but the vibe of the videos that he has now is really the opposite end of the spectrum.
But I guess you don't build a channel to 7.5 million subscribers and not learn a thing or two about ideas, titles, and thumbnails. Like, I'm sure when he said, I want to make a DIY channel, he probably had hundreds and hundreds of ideas of what to do. And he selected the right ones, right? Because all of these look really interesting. I'd never heard this channel before today, but I want to watch all of them. Well, at least 2 of them that really stand out. But the thumbnails are great. And I think you cannot just start this channel and have, a million subs in 4 videos without knowing something about YouTube. I haven't watched the videos, but I imagine they're edited quite good and the pacing's quite nice for a 15-minute video. But from a packaging perspective, like this is someone who clearly knows what they're doing. And I imagine his previous experience helped him.
Yeah, I'm certain. And I think, a large portion of these subs as well will have come over from being told about it in the closure video on the previous channel. But you're totally right. Like this obviously is an atypical example. But yeah, so you mentioned pacing. Like, what I really like about this is these are very, very personality driven videos. And, kind of like we were saying with Mike Israetel, where very much out the gate, there isn't much of a focus on, I guess, retention hacking or any of the kind of principles you usually see. He pretty much just lays out like, so the Office Pod one, for example, he just says, so the other week, my mother-in-law came to stay and she had to have a bedroom. And so I got kicked out of the bedroom, which I use for my office. And so I had to work on the kitchen table and I didn't like that. And so I want to build a solution. And like that's it. And it's like, there's no bells and whistles to it. He just explains what he wants to do. And then we spend this time with him doing it. But what kind of flips it when he's then actually making this stuff is that at points he's kind of describing what he's doing. And so for me, as someone who's kind of like wanting to get into more DIY stuff, but doesn't really have much skill, you can kind of get a sense of the tools that he's using, the skills that you might need to build up. But then sometimes he'll stop describing what he's doing and he'll just start talking about a personal story. Often it's related. So like he'll give a bit more context on, I don't know, his mother-in-law or something. But he'll then start using very visual cues to kind of keep explaining what he's doing, but without any more having to say, and then I use these like 3 screws and drilled them in and blah, 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 blah. It's like you'll see him cutting this little gap in the door that he's building for his office, say, and he's not explaining what he's doing. He's talking about something else. And then you see him kind of layer this nice looking material over the top of it. And then after he's done, you're still thinking like, what is this thing for? And then at the end, you see him then using that little gap to just like pull the door of the office open. And so I'm probably like really overanalyzing that particular aspect of it. But what I do like is that mixture between, you can kind of learn something, you can kind of, get better at DIY, but at the same time, you're spending time with this guy who's just like, he's really funny and he's got little anecdotes and, he's just an interesting person to kind of spend 50 minutes with. So
that's so interesting. It's like, visual curiosity gaps, like what's going to happen next with that thing. What it reminds me of is, have you seen these short videos where someone is cooking, like they're making a steak, but they're telling you a story? They're like, someone like the first shot is like they put a steak down on the chopping board and they start putting flaky salt on it, and then like, so the other day I came back from a date with a boy in New York City and this is what happened, and then you're watching and like, what's going to happen next with the story, what's going to happen next with the steak?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I think, there was that channel. I don't know if he makes videos anymore, but it's like he'd make 48-hour nachos or something. He'd take 2 days to make seemingly very basic meals and would just, like I kind of said before, it's this matching the format of the video to the intention of the person watching. And if you've got someone who just wants to hang out for a bit, then like totally mixing, I think, a dexterous skill with a bit of nice storytelling is something that's really interesting. I have one other thing to say about the thumbnail. I don't know if there's much more to discuss. I think this is just a really fun channel to check out. But obviously, yes, like you say, Jamie, there's clearly existing experience with how this guy's making his thumbnails. But what I do like particularly about the Office Pod one, and actually this is very similar to these 48-hour meal type channels, is that this thumbnail, the Office Pod one, there is no doubting what the thing is. It's just a high-res image of an interesting looking thing, in the same way that 48-hour beef Wellington or whatever is just going to be a textless image of a very high-res, delicious, succulent looking beef Wellington. And what you often get with thumbnails is like you'll have the title and then you'll think, okay, what text can I use in the title to like double down on the curiosity? How can I open up another curiosity gap with what I say? Or maybe it's the expression that I'm pulling, like what does that say about blah, blah, blah. And that's all really valuable stuff. And a lot of videos you're kind of stuck with having to think of a thumbnail like that. But if what you're making is just something that is really, really visually interesting, I like that he doesn't overcomplicate it. It's just him leaning back in his little office, looking chilled. And I think that's a really nice way of making thumbnails if you have the option to do so. All right, Jamie. So to finish off this week, which channel have you been looking at?
So I've been looking at this YouTube channel recently. You might have heard of him on Twitter. His name is Mark Liu. He is sort of like one of these indie entrepreneurs. I think they're called, what's the name that they call themselves? Indie hackers. That's
like
it. Yeah. So
right?
Yeah, just like Levels.io, if you've heard of him. If you're unfamiliar with the term, it's essentially people who like to be solopreneurs and they create these digital products living sort of a nomad life. And Peter Levels, incredible entrepreneur. If you've ever seen his stuff, he had a really good podcast actually recently with Lex Friedman, which I highly recommend. But Mark Liu is sort of like adjacent to Peter Levels. I think Peter Levels is like the number one. He's sort of like the Mr. Beast of the indie hackers. And Mark Liu is up there, but I wouldn't say he's quite number one, but he has like a very interesting past because he's had a lot of smaller projects that have brought him like $1,000, $500 a month. Nothing too crazy, but he would always document how he was growing these businesses on his Twitter account. And I think it was within like the last year and a half, he finally had a hit with one of his projects that he was making called DataFast. And I won't go into what that business is because it's not really relevant, but it made him like $50,000 a month and all of his other little projects add up. And what he started to do is actually develop an audience over on YouTube, which I think is quite unique. I've not really seen many indie hackers go to YouTube to talk about building in public. It's usually on Twitter and in blog posts and newsletters, because it's like just that you can get tweets out like 10 of them in a day, but you can't really publish 10 videos in a day or 10 videos a week. It's just not feasible. But what he started to do is he's uploaded a couple of different types of videos to the channel that have really helped him to blow up. He has about 102,000 subscribers now, which is quite remarkable considering his Twitter account, which was like his biggest driver, is 137K followers. So for him to have 102,000 followers over the course of a year, because a year ago he only had 2,000 subscribers, I think it's really good growth. And I would argue that, having YouTube viewers is potentially more impactful than Twitter followers. I think there's something to be said there, but he's had a great year. And so he started producing these videos in a series called the Solopreneur Diary. And just to give you listeners a bit of a gist of what the title is, I made 131K in May. And in these videos, they're about 15 minutes long. He just breaks down his revenue streams for the month, how he's building those businesses, giving any updates, things that he's added onto the individual projects that he has. And he basically just gives an update. And he's been doing that on a monthly basis. The numbers always change month to month. And I think it's really interesting for people to go in and just listen and see what he's doing. I think Pat Flynn did this once upon a time. I think he used to have a website where he would document all of the things that he'd done over that month, how much money he was making. And I think it was very, very useful for people to watch. I think he's stopped that now. But there's not many people out there who do it. And so I think this really got a lot of traction, because there are a lot of people in like this entrepreneurial space on YouTube where they say, here's how to grow a business, and they kind of like give a tip or they show off the lifestyle. But in reality, you can't really see if it's legit or not. Whereas I think someone like Mark, who's constantly documenting on Twitter and is very open in these videos, I think it brings a lot of returning viewers back to his content.
I feel like having proof that what you're saying is working is maybe increasingly important. I mean, one thing I've got to mention about Mike, and that is also true for Mark, is Mike is just this huge guy, and so if he's telling you about how to train, then the proof is almost right there. Mm-hmm. And with Mark, it's exactly the same, right? He's saying, this is how much I made in April. So no one is going to be commenting saying, is this guy legit?
Yeah, he opens up his Stripe and he shows you how many customers he's got. He really breaks it down. And it's just really cool to see. I think that's why channels like Starter Story really took off, was because it was like this deep dive behind the scenes into businesses that are growing quite rapidly online. I think there's a lot of desire for people to build their own products, but not really knowing how the cookie is made. And these types of videos, I think, really help people to get a peek behind the curtain and an idea of how they could do it for themselves.
So if an entrepreneur or anyone really came to you and said, I want to start a channel, and you were trying to apply advice based on what Mark Liu is doing, what would you tell them?
Well, I think that's the interesting thing, because a lot of the entrepreneurs on YouTube right now who have had some success, they kind of go into the talking head, here's like how to grow a newsletter and how to monetize it. It's this one singular topic. Whereas with Mark, he's kind of gone down this vlogging path. And I think would work for a lot of other entrepreneurs who want to start YouTube channels, because they just don't have the time. They're very busy. When you're dealing with like talking head content, you kind of need to have this on-camera presence where your signal to noise ratio is high in terms of delivering value. Whereas with Mark, he has these weekly vlogs where he just kind of like films a little clip on Monday, then he'll film like 3 minutes on a Tuesday, another minute on a Wednesday. And by the end of the week, you've seen him go through and deal with like a problem that he's had with one of his websites. And I just think that's a lot easier for entrepreneurs to create that kind of content, but it has to be valuable. And I think with Mark, he manages to strike this balance between the two. And he's very open about the successes as well as the failures. Like, if you follow him on Twitter a few weeks back, basically, someone found like a bug on his website, and rather than DMing Mark to say, hey, here is this problem, maybe you can get it fixed, the guy publicly tweeted it, essentially to get his own likes and retweets to build his account. And Mark fixed the problem, but he kind of quote retweeted it and said, I hate it when, well, not hate, but he's like, I don't like it when people publicly show a glitch or a bug on your website that people can exploit to get data of customers. And a lot of people didn't like that reaction. Some people agreed with Mark that it should be done in private. But what it created was a number of people basically going on his website and trying to tear it apart to tweet their own post saying, hey, look, here's another bug on Mark's website. And it became this big thing. And you see him deal with that on Twitter, but then a week later, you watch this happen in the vlog. And he's very open. Like, he starts crying in the video about how hard it hit him and his business, and how he felt like he had a mob attacking him and his business, and how it was resulting in him losing money, and people basically just trying to attack the site and bring it down. And it's interesting to kind of have like this real-time experience with Mark on his Twitter account day to day, but then you get this weekly vlog where you kind of know some of the things that have been going on. So it's this really interesting balance, I think, from an entrepreneurial perspective. And I would like to see more entrepreneurs go down this path. I think, if you go back to like 2015, 2016, this was the appeal of Gary Vee. Gary Vee blew up in that time because he was a big entrepreneur documenting his week, and people loved it. And I don't think he does it as much now. But as a whole, vlogging kind of trended down over the last few years. And I've actually find it really refreshing to watch Mark's content, because I don't think there are many people vlogging like he is. It has a very Casey Neistat vibe to it.
What I like about it in particular is I think his stuff, just having looked at it very briefly, is kind of the antidote to the types of videos that superficially look very similar to this. So it's the channels that come out every week with another 7 side hustles that are going to make you X $1,000 a month. And you're watching all of these videos, and a lot of them are very good, but you're like, are you really doing all of this stuff? And it comes back to the proof thing again. But it's like, even if you are, like, what's your goal? What's your aim? What are you just like grabbing at the things that you can to make money easily? Whereas this, it's like, I'm making all this money through these different things that I'm doing. But like you say, you get the personality, you get the rationale for why he's building things in certain ways, why he's, how he's making so much money. And I really like that. It feels like a nice, characterful version of those types of, here's how you make money as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Like, he's in the arena. He's in the arena. Whereas, like you say, start a drop shipping, go do day trading. It's like, you're just a listicle of just online businesses, but do you actually do it? Whereas with Mark, there's proof, and he shows proof all the time.
If you think about the advice of, create things for the type of customer or audience that you want to have. If you imagine that you have, 1,000 true fans who have watched your YouTube channel about how you've grown all your own businesses, and they're like, we love this stuff. That's probably more valuable than 50,000 people who are really into watching listicles about how they could be millionaires if they just chose this random thing that they could, you probably get a people who are a lot more thoughtful and intentional, and honestly, maybe more likely to succeed. So maybe it's not so good for selling courses that are aimed at, thousands and thousands of people, but you could, I don't know, I'm sure you can monetize it in interesting ways that would feel more wholesome.
I think the last point I would make on this is it just seems that the entry level to get a video out is very low for him. Like I said before, it seems from the vlogs, he's just recording a clip a day and then stitching those together. But also just in terms of like the titles and the thumbnails, it's very scrappy. You can tell that for him, he's just kind of decided one day, I want to start a YouTube channel. I'll make it a vlog, and I'll just put it up. And I think he's obviously leveraged his Twitter audience. It's how I found his YouTube channel. But for him, I imagine he has a lot of enjoyment from doing this. And the fact that he's grown an audience that's nearly bigger than his Twitter, which is his biggest audience, in under a year, I think is quite remarkable. And so for a lot of people out there, I think, especially if you're consuming this type of content, you're probably like, I need to optimize the title, the thumbnail, the video edit, the script. And it's like, yes, of course, the more you can improve those things, the better the content will be. But like, don't let it get you into this overthinking state where you don't put out the content or you don't put it out frequently. I think for Mark, he's just taking the philosophy of, I create a video a week, I put it up and I move on to the next one and I maybe try and improve something. I don't think he's going back and trying to optimize all of his thumbnails. I think he's just kind of like, this is to keep my community informed on what I'm doing. If it grows my audience and people enjoy it and it helps promote my businesses, so be it. But I don't think he's trying to get customers here. I think he's just trying to nurture his current audience and community.
Thanks for listening. If you're interested in another episode where we break down 3 YouTube channels we really like, check the link in the description or this video right here.